So not every vintage Coach wallet is a good buy, and honestly there are some styles that we probably wouldn't buy again. So vintage Coach pieces are becoming really popular again, which is what led us to deciding to buy a big haul of 60 vintage Coach wallets. We actually do a little bit of a haul and a little bit of a chat about each of the wallets that we had in our haul in our last video, so make sure and check that out if you haven't already seen it. So you may have noticed, as I mentioned before, that vintage Coach is becoming a lot more popular just now. So, and there's a few reasons for this. So some of the things are related to the materials that are being used in these vintage pieces. So they're really good quality materials. They are also a really timeless design a lot of the time. So the wallets and the bags are really timeless, so don't really go out of fashion. And there has been a lot of interest, especially related to, you know, Y2K, early 2000s trends. That has caused an increase in interest in vintage Coach as well. So in this video, we're actually going to talk about some of the vintage Coach pieces that personally we would avoid. Now, we're basing this on the fact that recently we have actually purchased a big bundle of 60 vintage Coach wallets that we are selling in our store, House of Jamz, and this is just kind of like based off what we have learned from some of the pieces that were included in that haul, as well as kind of previous things that we've sold as well. So one type of wallet or piece that I would personally avoid, and this is actually more to do with the condition of it, not so much a certain style of vintage Coach piece, is anything that's overly worn or has a lot of cracked leather on it. So this is where the corners are really cracked, the edges are maybe flaking and really cracked, and it just looks really old and worn. Some wear is obviously, you know, maybe actually quite nice, especially when it, you know, it's a really vintage piece. It can add a little bit of character, but then there's a certain point where it just kind of goes past that, and it just maybe needs to be either restored, or maybe you need to think about selling it as kind of like a, you know, a really lower piece, a lower sort of cost item, because it doesn't really feel premium anymore. So the next type of vintage Coach wallet I'd personally avoid is anything that has quite strange colours. So things that are odd, you know, odd colours, maybe not colours that you would typically go for, as these can be quite hard to style. I often find that customers find it quite difficult to imagine themselves wearing it. Obviously, if you have maybe an idea to show how to style the piece, definitely do that, because that obviously makes it easier for the buyer to see how they would wear it. But yeah, often strange colours, harder to style colours are ones that I'd personally avoid as well. So what you'd be kind of wanting to go for is more neutrals and sort of easier to use or easier to style colours like black, brown, cream, tan, that kind of thing. So the next types of Coach wallets that I'd personally be avoiding is anything that has cheaper feeling materials. So if you do actually happen to compare an older vintage Coach wallet to a newer one, you can definitely feel a difference in the materials. And again, I've actually mentioned this in our last video when I did our Coach haul, and you can definitely feel if the interior leather feels quite maybe stiff, a bit plasticky, a bit kind of, you know, just not really good quality compared to the sort of older Coach wallets where the materials, the leather's a lot more supple, a lot more flexible, a lot maybe softer feeling, smoother feeling. And you can just tell the quality is just a lot better usually with the older items and maybe some of the newer ones. So those are the types of pieces I would probably try and avoid if I could. So another type of Coach piece that I would be personally avoiding is anything that's overly complicated in its design. So maybe something that has too many compartments, too many straps, too many buckles, too many zips, that kind of thing. I'd be avoiding that. I think that more minimal sort of, you know, timeless pieces, those are the kinds of pieces that are more in fashion just now. Those are the kind of pieces that are not really going to go out of fashion, as I said, they're quite timeless. So anything that's too overcomplicated looking, I'd be avoiding, or anything that's too kind of too trendy looking, and you just think actually that style is maybe going to go out of fashion in a year or so, I'd kind of avoid those kinds of pieces as well. So another type of Coach wallet I'd personally be trying to avoid is anything that's got damaged hardware, which, you know, if you are buying, say, a big bulk order, there might be a few of those pieces in there. So anything that's got broken zips, broken studs, tarnished zips, so if the zips just look a little bit rusty. I mean, personally, we do have a couple of pieces like that, and obviously we have to be very transparent in when we're listing them. But even if an item has, you know, a broken zip or a tarnished zip or something, it just kind of makes it look that little bit less premium, and obviously makes it a little bit trickier to maybe sell it for what the wallet might actually be worth, even though the rest of it is in really good condition. So that's just a few examples of types of Coach wallets I would try and avoid if you are wanting to sort of focus on the better quality and sort of ones for yourself, but also if you are trying to resell them. But now we're going to talk about the types of things that you want to look out for, the types of items that you want to be buying. So the types of Coach wallets you want to be looking out for are ones that are made of leather, especially that nice soft grained leather with the texture on it, or the sort of tan leather, or even pieces that have canvas but with the tan kind of leather details on them. And in the types of styles that I'd be looking for would be the classic like zip around wallets, so ones where the zip goes all the way around the three sides of the wallet, as well as the flap wallet. And you can actually get these in different sizes as well. You can get sort of longer ones as well as like little smaller ones. We've got a big selection of bigger ones, medium sized ones, small ones as well. And then anything as well that's got quite minimal branding. So obviously the Coach print that you'll see on quite a lot of the canvas and leather wallets is usually quite subtle. So it's usually like black and grey or brown and beige. It's not too loud, it's not too in your face. So even though the print is all over the piece, it is still quite subtle and it is still quite minimal. So those kinds of pieces are other ones that I would be looking out for as well. And then obviously anything that has the kind of really easy to wear colours. So as I mentioned before, anything that's maybe black, brown, beige, kind of tan, or even especially like cream and maybe like off-white and things like that, those kinds of pieces are really popular. Personally, we've actually found with the pieces that we have, anything that's got pink on it. And I don't know if that's maybe just because we are in May just now, so we're coming into obviously summer, end of spring, summer, so people are maybe wearing a lot more lighter colours like white, cream and light pink. So I've actually found that the pink pieces are quite popular as well, or even the pieces that are like beige and pink, those are really popular as well. Obviously, we do have a few pieces as well that are like navy blue and burgundy and like bits of purple and things on them. And I've got a feeling those kind of pieces will probably be more popular when it comes into autumn and winter. So obviously it totally depends on the season as well. So I think one of the reasons that vintage Coach is becoming so popular again is because people are starting to move away from fast fashion, maybe pieces that aren't made as well with, you know, not really great materials. And people are really starting to think about, you know, the longevity of the pieces that they're buying. They're wanting things that are going to last. They're wanting things that are made of good quality materials. And then as well, I think some people are also moving away from the more kind of flashy, in your face logos and fonts and things like that, and prints and stuff that are quite, you know, obviously a certain brand. And they're moving towards things that are a little bit more subtle, but still have that kind of good quality luxury feel. And I feel like vintage Coach pieces fit perfectly into that need and into that look. And yeah, so I think that's probably why, one of the reasons why they're becoming a lot more popular now. And then obviously another reason is that, you know, vintage pieces are just becoming more popular. You know, vintage is always going to be popular, but I feel like there has been a big shift in people wanting vintage pieces, and especially because Coach now, all the Y2K stuff is now technically classed as vintage, and it just kind of fits in really perfectly, especially to all the Y2K 2000s trends. And even though that is a trend, I do feel like the vintage, as in the Y2K 2000s Coach, is very timeless and minimal anyway, so it kind of fits into both of those trends. It's trendy just now, but it is also the kind of styles that are going to be probably quite timeless and not really go out of fashion. So it's a perfect combination of what's in fashion just now, but also something that will last quite a long time. So as I mentioned before, we recently actually did a big bulk blind order of vintage Coach wallets, and I have to say that after us going through all of these wallets, doing a little bit of research, it has become really clear to us that even within this one brand there is quite a variation in the materials that are used and the quality of even the same style of pieces. Like, we actually have a few different examples of like long zip around wallets that are kind of the same style, but you can tell they're from different time periods, and you can really see the difference in the, you know, the materials that's been used, as well as the quality of the actual design itself and the craftsmanship. So yeah, it's definitely something that we've been learning a lot with you know, with our sort of store and things like that, and it's just really, you know, it is really interesting, and we have really noticed a few things, you know, to look out for, which will really help us, you know, in the future when we're looking for more pieces to add to our store. So yeah, so vintage Coach can still be really amazing, as well as more, as you know, more modern pieces as well. However, you just have to become a little bit more selective, we've found, with the types of pieces that we're maybe sourcing, and if you are looking for your own vintage coach pieces, the types of pieces that you're looking out for. And that's just something that's become quite clear after us looking through and handling all these different pieces. So if you found this video interesting or useful, make sure and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos, and we'll see you in our next one. Bye!